A. Gill is here, and he's going to ask me questions, but my job is to try and extract from him his life as a TV critic. I was provoked to want to do this session because of a conversation in a lift at the BBC. And it's a bit like Twitter, conversations in a lift at the BBC. Lifts are reasonably slow, but you can only get so much into a conversation before you reach the 6th floor, the 7th floor, where the executives hang out. And I was privy to a conversation with a really quite senior executive of the BBC who said that TV critics were rubbish and the BBC didn't need to listen to them because, in quotes, we know what our audience feels. And I felt actually quite indignant about that because I'm a long-term reader of A. Gill. And I want to ask actually, how many of you in the audience have had a film reviewed by A. Gill? It's quite high. And how many of you had a hostile review? Well, that's not so high. Anyway.
I'd also like to ask, how many of you thought I was right?
Well, can you ask me the same question? I'm going to answer the same question. I mean, yes, it's in double figures. And did I think how many of them were hostile? No, it's about 50-50. And did I think they were right? Well, I got down at breakfast on a Sunday morning, read the review, got very pissed off. But by lunchtime, alas, I thought probably you were at least 50% right. And there was one actually last weekend, which I will tell, I spent about a year trying to figure out how to get films about human rights on television without seeming pathetic, all right? So what do? Well, you try to have films about protagonists and conflict, etc. And so I get down, after breakfast, and I read A. Gill, and it says, BBC4 was having an agitprop petitioning signing week. It was the voice from the student union showing a series on injustice and repression. These are the sort of documentaries people who say there's nothing worth watching on TV, think TV should be showing, but don't watch them when it does. So I thought, well, either I've failed fucking totally and I'm hopeless, or A. Gill is 50% right and 50% wrong, and ultimately you can't show films about human rights on television without seeming like you're a member of the student union. But I'm not sure what the answer is.
So is that a question?
Yeah, can you
show... I think it's very difficult. I think that particular... Did anyone see that film about Amnesty? The documentary about Amnesty International and about... No, none of you did. You were all doing better things.
No. Well, a few.
You're the people who think there's rubbish on television. You didn't watch it, and it was incredibly worthy. And if I hadn't been paid to, I wouldn't have watched it.
Could you have made a documentary of Amnesty that, if the subject?
I think in almost every way you could have made a better documentary. I think it was a lesson in how to take a fascinating human subject. And turn it into cardboard.
Let's be specific. What actually would you have done to improve it?
Thankfully, I don't have to do that. I don't make documentaries. I don't have to be specific.
That's not an answer.
It is the answer you're getting.
Well, I contribute to newspapers.
The answer is that let's start at the beginning with criticism.
Okay.
What do you think the purpose of a critic is?
I think the purpose of a critic is to get up in the morning, stay reasonably sane, not be plastered, go to the gym, and periodically, in between doing more interesting things, sit down in front of the TV set and judge things. And I think the purpose of a TV critic actually is to convert individual taste at some level into some general notion of what should be done on television and what shouldn't be done on television.
Fine, okay, so we cut there. Entirely wrong. From the first and last. The job of a television critic, the job of all critics, is to sell newspapers.
That could be true, but surely
my job is to sell newspapers.
Well, you're not doing a very good job, because there are many more effective ways of selling newspapers.
Don't tell them that. What my job isn't is to improve television.
No,
I'm not a consultant.
I didn't say
your
job was to improve television. I said it was to have some idea in general of what was absolutely terrible and what was less terrible about television. Improving television, look, fuck's sake. I mean, there are zillions of people who are paid to do that, and very bad they are at doing it. But a critic can surely
It's
have
interesting
views
how
about
many
television.
people who do get reviewed. I mean, if you have been reviewed, the last person that I write reviews for, the people who make the programs I review, you should already know what's wrong with it. You shouldn't have to have me tell you. I write for people. Actually, I'm not entirely sure who I write for.
Well,
actually.
let's ask her, why did you become a TV critic? I mean, we know that your dad's a very eminent documentary maker, but more to the point, what was it? Did you just get asked to do the job?
Okay, there was
or why did you actually want, you know, yeah, go for it.
Criticism in itself is a weird thing. It's a weird thing to do. It's not a natural thing to do. If you ask...
Doesn't know listening to you, it seems perfectly natural. That's all you do.
If you ask somebody about, like I asked you earlier, about a film, about a documentary, and I say, what's it like? What you say was, oh, it was great. It's about this bloke, and he gets up and he goes and he starts Amnesty International, and then he meets a girl and they fall in love.
No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Listen to me. And what you're doing is you tell me the plot. And that's what most people do.
No, I don't ever tell plot.
Most people tell you what it is they've seen. You go, okay, well, that was fine. What did you like about it? Well, it was just good. I was entertained. There is no upside in pulling the wings off things. You won't like it anymore. It doesn't make a bad thing better to find out what it was. There's something psychopathic about being a critic.
Yeah, I totally agree about that, but then I want to know why you do it then.
There is, because I'm good at it. And it's, I mean,
No,
I don't know why
don't.
I'm good at it. You just find some people just have a natural, I have a natural need to find out to dissect my reaction
All right,
to culture.
well,
so you look at it and you go, why did that work? Why didn't it work?
Well, we're going to go on arguing, that's for sure, but can we have the first clip now, because this is something that you truly dislike, and so did I, by the way.
This one, who I've never
Wonderful.
seen, and I think she looks like a tranny, owes us £600.
Oh, please stop.
This girl, we've been trying for a year, it's never happened. Who's this? I don't like her.
I think there's a lot of girls that we've had on that board for years and years and years that need to go. This one's only been on that board since June, so just give her a bit of a chance. And she doesn't cost you any money.
I just don't think she looks like she should. Wow, what are you doing here?
Drop!
Hasn't worked since last Friday.
Hasn't worked since last Friday. Drop.
Have you missed me?
Yeah.
But you're dropped.
Yes.
We dropped you just now. She's just got her tits done.
No.
She's got dropped.
Because every one of my girls, I hate this. It's true, it's like every girl is...
Okay,
Sorry,
we had
was
enough
there
of that.
anyone who made that in here?
No, so that's cool. All right, so you're sitting at home and you watch this, and yeah, what don't you like about it? Just tell us a bit. What's the like? You're about to say?
Everything. Everything about it was specious. It was... Well, I can't remember what I said about it, except that
I can tell
the
you.
the story arc of this was the first episode was about a girl who was just 16, who was going to be a model, who was a pretty enough little girl, and these people had been grooming her, and they talk about grooming them without any irony, or morality, grooming this girl to be the next Kate. There was the next something. The next Kate Moss, and she got to New York and she was unhappy and lonely, and she said she wanted to go home, go back to school, do her A-levels and hang out with her friends and eat what she wanted. And the fury of the model bookers, of how dare she? And they used the sorts of hideous manipulation of emotional and bullying and financial, saying, do you know what you're doing? You're going to ruin your life.
Well, listen.
And I mean, it was,
right.
that was, I found, I think the whole thing was incredibly,
All right,
I've just done what I said critics should never do, which is just tell you the plot.
Well, let me impersonate a Channel 4 executive for the moment and say, this film satisfies your curiosity about blah, 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 etc. I mean, why is it that you experience such venom and hostility towards this?
There is particularly with Channel 4, there is a there is a real problem now with something that they themselves call enhanced nosiness, which is the sorts of I've got a wonky cock documentary.
Can we enlarge on that?
You want to enlarge on my wonky cock?
Yeah, enlarge on the wonky cock, please.
It's that I was born with a terrible facial injury, and I'm now going to hang out with a girl who spends £10,000 a year on facials. It's Victorian freak show television.
Okay.
And of course the reason that we're told it's being made is that it gives a voice to people who don't normally have a voice on television. Is it demystifies people who may have prejudice in their lives, and we know.
And you're saying
that's entirely nonsense. What it is completely prurient. And my personal feeling is that as Channel 4 has lost Big Brother, it still wants to hold on to the Big Brother audience, and what it's showing them are, documentaries about modulation.
Is there anyone in the audience from Channel 4 who would like to take issue on this count? Well, if there's no one who wants to...
Is there anybody here who actually likes watching embarrassing illnesses, or whatever it's called, dysfunctional teenagers?
Okay. Does anyone want to talk that, who likes embarrassing illnesses? Yes.
There's a lady there with her hand.
Yeah.
Yes. No, just shout.
Just shout and say who you are first.
Okay, I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm actually a journalist. I'm not a critic, but I write about the business. And the thing about embarrassing bodies is it was about educating, theoretically, the public about things that they didn't otherwise see. It's like showing people horrible things, and they could then participate and say, well, I've got a horrible thing too.
Adrian, is this...
Public service. This is public service broadcasting.
Yeah, it's public service broadcasting.
Fuck off.
Okay, on that note, we're going to take the next clip. A bit of the next clip, please.
Gary, this is all the discard, slightly less than all the discard actually, from one haul of the net. Have you ever seen it lumped together in a big mass of fish like that?
No, I haven't seen it before.
It looks like a good haul of fish to me.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like an old-fashioned picture of fish ready to go to market.
Yeah. A lot of money's worth. A lot of money's worth.
Do you know how many baskets of fish we've got here, James?
We've got 20 baskets of fish.
This time, yeah. Okay, this, by contrast, you did like this, and it did, according to you, fulfill some sort of public service, didn't it?
Well, I like Hugh anyway, and I.
You mean you know him?
Yeah.
Is that what happens a lot in your life?
I taught him how to cook.
Did you say that? Well, no.
I have
what a
said
stupid
that.
question. Do you often?
I've often given him very bad reviews.
Yeah.
I think River Cottage. I find I've increasingly tough to watch.
Yeah.
Like someone's skinned Beatrix Potter.
What, Twee, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Twee, but this I
W11, Trust the
this
Fairness,
I think
you mean?
that this particular documentary about fish discards is a really it's a very important subject, and it's a way of making it accessible to a quite a big audience, and I thought it was quite neatly done.
Okay. So that was, yes, that was a better side of Channel 4, I guess. Yes. Let's go on to the next clip, which is, next clip, please.
This is Giles Correns.
Is he going to bite me if I go for it?
Pampered metropolitan foodie and sometime journalist who's never done a hard day's work in his life.
And this is Sue Perkins.
It's warm toddler urine.
Part-time comedian and part-time vegetarian.
Over the next few months, we're going to be trying our hand at growing our own veg.
How far apart?
Come on, Piggy, that one, come on. Just come on.
Mastering animal husbandry.
And making our...
Enough. Now, I have to ask a ritual question. Is there anyone in the audience who is connected with this program? So take aim and fire, please.
Well, again, Giles is a friend of mine, and I was very fond of his father. And I gave this a terrifically bad review. And at 10 o'clock, I got a text from Giles saying, "You're absolutely right." I mean, the idea that they've sort of recreated the good life with Giles and Sue Perkins, who are really not compatible for all sorts of reasons.
In what way? I mean, they're just sort of... not compatible with each other? Or with
Yes,
the
I mean, but the idea that there is this freesaw of perhaps sexuality between them, of some sort of togetherness, that they're, that the whole thing is based on their flirtatiousness, which is entirely concocted for television. I find just wearying and insulting.
I guess what I'm interested, you watch this on a DVD or you watch it live?
Can't remember.
But what do you usually do?
A bit of both.
Bit of both, okay. So
and now I have to watch it on the fucking computer.
But no, listen.
Oh, it drives me mad. I'm dyslexic. Typing in my password and it takes me hours.
Totally agree with that.
And I can't.
Do you have rules? Do you say to yourself, well, when this show comes in, Giles and Sue live the good life, I've got to watch every minute of it, or do you just say, well, I'll watch?
Yeah, I do have rules. My rules are I try and watch things as close to the way I would watch television if I were just sitting and watching television.
But what is that? In your living room?
I have a TV. I have a sofa. I watch it naked,
Watch it in the evenings?
I'm with somebody. If the telephone goes, I'll go and answer it.
Do you multitask? Do you try to read novels or consult the internet? Or
I never read novels. No, I don't.
What
no,
do you
read? I try and watch it the way you would watch television. I don't take notes. I just watch programs, and I watch it all the way through. I watch everything all the way through.
I can't read it all out to you. This was actually, it seemed to me, an extremely well crafted piece of criticism, but the malice sort of didn't bubble over the sentences. It was adroitly contained in every single insulting sentence. So I guess my question is, and it's not a criticism at all, did you get a lot of pleasure in writing something quite so negative about the show?
No, I don't. I don't innately get... Like, people often say, well, it's obviously so much easier to write bad things than good things. Well, it just isn't. I mean, it's not easy to write any of it. And what I get pleasure in is in making a readable article at the end of the week that you'll get to the end of. I'm making a thing, and I like the thing when I think it's well made.
So it's about making a thing, not being a role.
No,
so
I'm not.
Being a role of a critic.
I am what I am. This is just me.
Yeah. We've got some more clips, but anyone want to come in now? Any questions, observations so far?
Do you think you have the same audience, your readership is the same audience that you would get for crap television? I mean, do you think we're...
No, I think that's a very good... That's a...
Your nasty review is exactly the same as watching really terrible television.
But I think what the overlap of the audience is interesting, and you'll notice that different newspapers review different sorts of programs because of who they assume their audience is. So I think the best TV critic is Ali Ross, who's the critic for The Sun, who I think is just phenomenal. He's a terrific writer, and he's perfect for The Sun. He's also a nice bloke, but the bane of his life, I know, is that he has to review 3 soap operas every week, and he has to do them over and over. I mean, after 5 years, what else is there left to say about EastEnders? But he has to do it because the assumption is that that's what Sun readers are going to be watching. I probably review more documentaries than than tabloids do, because there's an assumption that Sunday Times readers are going to be watching more documentaries. That also coincides with me. As a person, I'm more likely to be a Sunday Times Observer reader than I am to be a News of the World Mail reader.
I mean, when you started a job, did you have views about television? Or
I mean, the reason you can't criticise anything. I also criticise food and restaurants, and I have in
You
the
did.
past.
I would say amid the rudest reviews, the very rudest was about this totally dreadful, expensive French restaurant that I'd never heard of, but it was a magisterial, 6,000 words?
L'Ami Louis.
Yeah, it was 6,000 word demolition
Do you know how long that was?
How long was it?
About 1,200 words.
Oh, no.
It
No,
just,
I don't believe
just
it.
reads like 6,000 words.
What was... Anyway.
No, but to criticise anything, you really have to love the thing.
What is it you love about
You can't, if you don't love it, then why do you care if people do it badly? And I grew up in a household that made television. My dad made documentaries, my mum was an actress. I am exactly the same age as television. I mean, if you think television, to all intents and purposes, starts as a big thing in 1953. I was born in 1954. It is the image of my generation, of my time. I mean, right at the beginning. We're all of us in at the beginning of this amazing, amazing new bit of culture. To invent a bit of culture, to be there when someone invents a bit of culture, is an astonishing thing. You know, you can walk into a theatre like this, and Aeschylus could walk into this theatre and he'd go, yeah, this is sort of what I do.
Yeah.
At 2,500 years, it hasn't changed. Not much. But, you know, television is changing constantly, all the time, because it's still in its minute infancy. Finding its language, finding what it does best, where it goes, how the audience reacts to it, whether the audience matters. All of those things. What's not to adore about that?
How has it changed, really, since you became aware of its...
Well, it stopped being... I mean, when my dad got into television, he came in with a generation of people who were university-educated, middle-class people who worship books. Everything was about books. Everything was about book learning and pipe smoking.
Did he actually
Probably
smoke?
together.
Is that...
And it was a very Tweedy thing, and television was going to be the medium that took what intellectual people got from books and distilled it and gave it to people who didn't have bookshelves. And that the great thing about television, it was going to be this open box, this window, I'm sure Hugh Weldon would have called it, this window into a better world. And they absolutely believed that. And they thought that it was going to be, it was going to do everything. It was going to bring international peace. It was going to bring knowledge. It was you ask Howard Wilson what he thought the greatest invention or the greatest thing that had happened in his time as Prime Minister. And he said, without having to think about it, unequivocally, he said, the invention of the Open University. And that seems astonishing now. But they just really believed that was what television was going to do. And I think the change in television is, we're in the middle of it now. Most of the changes have been technical things that, cameras have got smaller and you can do things on computers. A thing that would take a crew of 20 people, 15 years ago, you can now do with 2 people, or maybe just 1 person. So, I mean, all of those things have changed television a lot. But mostly what's changed television is its relationship with its audience. And that's a lot of what we're seeing, and I think a lot of what we're talking about is about how television relates to the people it perceives, it thinks are watching. And how
could you, let's go into that a bit. How does it relate to its audience now?
Well, at the moment, I think it's in the process of being very abusive to its audience.
Be more specific about that.
I think there's an enormous amount of reality television.
Yeah.
And all of the hinterland of I mean, I don't just mean Big Brother or the Jungle, but all of the stuff that uses, inverted commas, real people as part of the entertainment.
Is it like there was a great?
I think that it started off as being, if you think of early quiz shows that are really quite respectful of people who come on. You say thank you to them, and you ask them what they do, and you don't insult them, and you give them a cuddly toy at the end of it, and that was how television reacted to its audience. And now television is much more abusive.
Why do you think?
And exploitative
why is
of
this
its
happening?
audience.
Is this something that the producers are aware of doing? Does it cause people to watch it, or what is?
I think on one level they found there's an audience for it, and on another level I think it's cheap.
Another observation question? Yes.
I was just wondering, have you ever thought you've ever got something wrong after maybe a certain period? And also, what you think of other TV critics? Do you rate them? I'm not asking you to name names necessarily, but those that
go on.
Go on then. Who don't you rate and why? What do you think they get wrong? Do you think they just...
Yes, first of all, have I ever got things wrong? Yes. And usually I've got them wrong because of the nature of what I do. I watch one episode of something. So I'll watch the first episode and I'll review that. And then you'll go back and 3 episodes in, you'll realise it's got an awful lot better. So whenever I can, I do go back and say, I gave this a mediocre review and actually I think it's much better now. I have no problem with it. I don't feel less than for doing that. I think that's, you should. And it's usually because things do get changed and they do get better. And that's one of the things television can do that nothing else does. I mean, you watch a film, and the film is fixed and stuck, and that's it. It's never going to be any different. But television, of course, grows. An awful lot of television grows and changes. And reviewers who are bad, most television reviewers are dreadful. And they have traditionally been dreadful because it was a job that was given to either somebody you couldn't fire on the paper and it was a sort of a sunset job. You'd end up doing television criticism until you retired. Or it was given to somebody who would be a writer of colour, but what you wanted was just an article, and and the editor didn't really care what it was about. So television has been traditionally reviewed by an awful lot of people who really don't like television. So Roy Hattersley was a famously appalling television critic. He couldn't bear television.
For those foreigners here, he was how would you describe him?
Cunt.
I was going to say a somewhat overweight Labour politician, but. All right, another question maybe.
I tell you, the very worst television critic was the one who did it before me.
Who's that?
Well, one before me. Craig Brown did it before me, and he wasn't terribly good because again he preferred books, didn't really like television. No, it was the playwright. Pennies from Heaven.
Oh, Dennis Potter.
Dennis Potter was a properly appalling.
Well, I have
TV
to say
critic.
that when you were in the middle of this gigantic, eloquent riff about the purpose of television, I once produced a session with Dennis Potter for the Edinburgh TV Festival, and in fact, he had much the same views as you about television, except that he thought it should be much more didactic than you do. But he definitely, his own personal history of television is pretty much identical to yours. So why was he such a crap critic?
I think because really all he cared about was what he did on it. I mean, he was. I don't make television. I very rarely appear on television. It's not my thing. I mean, I'm too vain to go on television, and I wouldn't be any good at it. And I sound like Bertie Wooster's gay friend. I mean,
who is Bertie Wooster's gay friend?
Me.
Is that Gussie Finknottle?
Gussie.
Gussie. All right. Another question, please. You there?
Do you have benchmarks to differentiate between what you consider reality versus what is documentary?
I think that also is an interesting question, and it's what is a documentary is becoming a more and more germane question to ask. I think when you look, I think that we will end up here for our sins with The Only Way is Essex, and then there's another one.
No, there's a documentary we can watch, which you quite like, Nick. So there's a little clip of that.
Well, okay, but I mean, something like The Only Way is Essex, or the one that's now made about Chelsea.
What's the one, Chelsea one?
Made in Chelsea, which I've had real problems getting through the end to the whole one. I mean, I do watch them because I have to. They are insufferably dull, and the idea that these are somehow real. If you know anything about how television's made at all, if you've ever seen television for more than 10 minutes, the idea that this is you're watching a real slice of real life is plainly nonsense. I don't know whether that counts. Do you all think that counts as a documentary?
Does anyone want to speak to this?
Well, certainly dull doesn't, there are plenty of dull documentaries. So what,
Yes.
Yes, but that we know. But these are not only dull, as I understand Adrian's saying, but they're
I don't know. Do you think something like, millionaires going and pretending to be street sweepers and then giving people money, is that a documentary?
Well, let's conduct a poll. If you think millionaires going and pretending to be sweep sweepers is a documentary, will you please raise your hands? Well, nobody does.
Okay, is a guy who eats McDonald's for 30 straight days a documentary?
Well, there you go. Is it?
What do you think here? Wow. So are we to infer from this observation that nobody thinks Morgan Spurlock makes documentaries here?
And
that's an interesting discovery. What would you describe?
I don't necessarily think that the eating McDonald's for 30 days was necessarily a bad film. I don't think I quite enjoyed watching it, but I didn't think that in the sense of Man of Aaron that I was, all morning in the streets, I was watching a documentary.
When you refer to all these heavily overproduced, in your view, very dull things about Chelsea or millionaires, what do you call them if you don't call them documentaries?
I don't know. But one of the problems with television, but no, really, one of the really serious problems with television has always been that you've got to call everything something.
Yes.
So everything has to fit in. So docudrama. What the fuck's that? It's a mule. It's neither a drama, neither is it a documentary. Anything. I tell you the things we got to talk about while we're here. Anything that finishes off with fucking typewriting on the screen.
So
anything. You get shot in the head for that.
What finishes up with typewriting?
Everything starts off, and he then went on to have a happy life and died in Serbia in 1976.
Well, I don't think we do like those.
We don't like those.
We definitely don't.
And using music as a sort of an emotional cattle prod.
Well, I'm totally one with
using music and helicopter shots together.
Yes, and I guess the music of Philip Glass should be banned. Totally.
Anybody.
Yes.
Anybody who even sounds remotely like Philip Glass.
Yes. What else should be banned? Any other candidates for banning out in the audience? Don't be shy. Well, I'm a bit ashamed next we'll have another clip, but this is something you did quite like. So let's have a bit of the next clip. This is good.
I got nicked for a tie-up, what they call a tie-up. It's two guys got tied up.
What's a tie-up?
They went and tied two people up and stole a lorry load of cigarettes. That was it. Got 8 years for it.
Were you actually armed or?
No, they said it was armed robbery. Suddenly a gun appeared. What can you say?
Have you ever hurt anybody? What about the people being tied up?
Oh, that's not hurting anyone. I've never beaten anyone or shot anyone. I've never done a dastardly crime like that.
Have you been married before?
Yes. I've got one little grandchildren and one little daughters. One little kids I've got.
Do they know about your past?
Of course. How could they not know about my past? Don't be, there's nothing to be ashamed of. So I've got nicked, so what?
Do you not think you'll be judged for these?
No, of course not. Anyone who thinks like that's a fool. Who's to judge me?
That's the question.
Yeah, that is the question. Do you believe in God? Come on. You only believe what's been drummed into you since you were a little boy. Same as me. I can't say there's a God, I don't know, do I?
Okay. Well, you did like this. No surprise. It's wonderful.
Has anyone else seen this? This me. Yeah. Did anyone not like it?
Well, then.
This was a documentary about someone who just hung out outside Islington Crown Court, or Magistrates Court.
Yeah, correct.
And
Mark Isaacs.
And just interviewed people as they. Some people have repeat. You see, again and again, and it was a clever idea, and it was beautifully judged, and it was, I thought, made with enormous skill and tact and humour, and I loved it. And I then went back and looked at other things that he'd done. He made a marvellous film we were talking about before of just putting a camera in a lift in a tower block, and it was terrific, and one of the things that documentary does that not much else on television can do is give an overall authorial voice to a story. So television is rather like journalism, is a collegiate thing. It's made by lots of people, and we all and that's one of the things I like about journalism, is that it involves lots of other people. But occasionally with documentaries, you get these very, very strong single observations, and when they're clever and when they're well done, they're some of the most joyful things that appear on the box, and they couldn't appear anywhere else. That couldn't have been a magazine article. Yeah. It couldn't have been a feature film. It couldn't have been a book. It could only have been television.
Well, tell me a bit about that, because this is very interesting. You've started to use aesthetic qualities. The adjective joyful is very interesting. A lot of people would say that too many documentaries are a bit glum, but tell me in what way documentaries can capture whatever is absolutely fantastic.
Well, joy is actually quite one of the things that often that you rarely do see in documentary. We were talking earlier about how come it was that documentaries were all left wing. I mean,
we didn't. I tried to answer the question, I couldn't. But
I mean, why is it
that
that critics are all fascists and documentary makers are all socialists?
We could have another poll there. How many people think that documentaries are almost invariably made by people of left-wing sympathies?
Yeah, I mean,
there's almost a majority. Do you have any?
Well, I think that there is in the nature of creativity in making anything is essentially broadly a left-wing thing to do. I mean, the creative people tend to be people who want change, and people who want new things, and people who think that stuff can be improved and get better, which is broadly a left-wing platform. Right-wing people tend to think that change is all bad, that the best we can do is look after what we've got and be curators to the stuff that's been made before us. And that's not a position that you start off being a documentary maker. This is your Prince Charles. I'd like to show you this wonderful, wonderful building. Lovely. They really knew how to make things when they made this, didn't they?
So, yes, yes. Another question, please, someone. Yes, Carol.
You were one of the people who got a bad review?
No. Yes, you did.
Years ago, I don't remember it, 1914-18, the First World War, narrated by...
I don't remember it, no, but I know what happened. But I can remember... I know how it ended.
It ended very badly.
I can remember your review, and it's framed in my office. It said, "This was dumbing risible television with Blue Peter sets, hopelessly read by Dame Judi Dench. I've never seen anything quite so..." And I'm afraid you were absolutely right. Looking back on it, and the funny thing is we were talking earlier in the conversation about fake documentaries. We were talking about the difference between real documentary, which I would classify as observational documentary, and fake documentary, i.e. the sort of thing of imposing Jeremy Irons and Judi Dench, and I think you termed the article "Oh, What a Lovely War."
Yeah, I don't do the headlines. So
It was rather clever. But the key point is that it goes back to, I think, the core of the conversation, which is, I think what we all love is truth, is observational truth. And I think what would differentiate a lot of the programmes you don't like are programmes that are set up for television. The whole idea of the millionaire going to deprived area and giving away millions, well, that doesn't actually happen in real life.
Can I take that and move on and say that there was quite a good documentary on this week, which uses the head cameras of soldiers in Afghanistan to make a documentary, which is a film about the death of a soldier from the Royal Anglian Regiment. And I know some documentary makers have been worried about the amount of grabbed film from handheld cameras, in this case from the helmet camera of a soldier, but from mobile phones, that somehow that rests the responsibility away from them, or the ability to have a control over what the truth is given to people who just happen to be somewhere at a particular time. But I'm interested in you talking about set up reality not being documentary. How do you feel about documentaries that are made by embedded journalists with soldiers? Are they real documentaries or not?
Carol, you want to answer?
I think they're nearer towards a real documentary, because again, they are observing things as they are.
Because I was talking on the way, I travelled up here on the train with Molly Deneen, and we were talking about this on the train, about the nature of that all documentaries now that we see about the last three wars, the two Iraq wars and Afghanistan, have all been made with the connivance of the Ministry of Defence, of embedding people. Now, I've done this myself as a journalist. I was put into Iraq, and I was told at the beginning that I could go anywhere, that I could see everything, that that there would be no censorship of what I wrote about, of what I saw. And the reason that and I know that the ministry does this with everybody who goes into wartime, and one of the reasons they can do this is because there is innately something about being around soldiers, being with them, being close, them being people who you are in dangerous and often exciting situations with, that you start censoring yourself. And if you don't censor yourself, then you get a view which is that you like them. Soldiers are incredibly likable, as long as you're behind the gun bit. And being around them, you'll have noticed that there aren't any documentaries coming out of these wars that are innately anti-war. They may be anti-death and people being hurt.
Well,
but they are all essentially pro-soldier.
Well, John Pilger made a very anti-war documentary. It's a different type of documentary.
Who gives a shit what John Pilger thinks about anything?
Right.
But what I mean is that the big stories that have come out of the war, the stories about Abu Ghraib, about the British soldiers killing the hotel worker in Iraq, haven't been made by journalists or documentary makers that have been embedded with the soldiers.
That's true.
They've been made outside. And I wondered if any of you felt you had any comment about that as documentary makers.
Yes, over there.
I think this comes back to what you were saying, that most documentary filmmakers tend to be left of center. And I think, but that's a different, if the Ministry of Defense is already controlling what kind of information you have access to and places you with the soldiers, that's going to slant what you're showing.
But the fact is that they don't. Is that they trust and they know that you will do it yourself because you like the soldiers.
Right, but you did say it was censorship.
Well, I think it's self-censorship. I think it is. I mean, I was responsible for this as well. I came out thinking I was in a helicopter that was rocketed, and we got out of it. I wanted the pilot to be the mother of my children. I mean, I wasn't going to write something shitty about him.
Another question. Anyone? Yes, there.
Do you choose what you review, or does somebody else
kind of comic side to the vitriol is a very important balance in how you do it. I just wonder if you choose what you're going to write about and get a balance of some kind, or whether it's just whatever comes your way.
What I do is on every the beginning of a week, I look at our review section, the next week's preview section, and I go through that. And I look at the things that are being previewed, because we have very good previewers who I trust and use a lot. So I look at what they've picked out as being the picks of the week. And with my editor, I will choose out of that usually between 7 and 12 programs. There are some things which you've got to do. They're going to be the big stories of the week. They're going to be the big things of the week, and they will be a hideous fucking costume drama.
You don't like any costume drama?
Oh,
yeah.
It's this hangover from my dad's generation of TV. It's this genuflecting to books. Is that the greatest thing a television drama can do is send you back to the book. Well, the next time when have you ever seen a book that said, if you enjoyed this, watch the television show? I hate that. I hate the sense that is the senior service of culture.
Yeah.
And it isn't, and they're crappy stories, those 19th century women.
Is there a senior service of culture?
No.
Right.
Yes, poetry. No, don't sigh.
No, I wasn't sighing.
No, someone down there was sighing. Poetry just is. Poetry is. But if you ever do anything with words, how people manage to make poetry. Okay. There's no such thing as a bad poem.
Another question, but, well, I'm not sure about that.
No, there's only poems and things that don't work.
Who's the great poet of the last 10 years? While we get another question.
Of the last 10 years?
Yeah, in contemporary culture, which poets do you like?
Oh, I like John Stammers.
Oh, I haven't even heard of him. That's
There
terrible.
you go.
John Stammers. Has anyone heard of John Stammers? No.
He won the Forward Prize. I gave him.
Another question. Yes.
When we're making documentaries for television, you talk about being collegiate. So when we're making documentaries for television, you talk about being collegiate, but often as program makers, we're sort of subject to the whims of the broadcaster, who effectively edit and oversee our work. Just wondering if your work gets overseen and edited, and how much it's just your voice, and is your editor ever censoring what you're saying or affecting it?
Yes. Well, I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, I am edited. Usually I'm edited for sense rather than content. And it's a foolish journalist who says, I don't want to be edited. The subs save my life, often. So I generally overwrite, again, like most journalists, and so I have to be cut down for size. I have a very sympathetic editor who I've worked with pretty much all the time I've been a critic. So we've worked together for nearly 2 decades now, and she's very bright, and Helen, and she often disagrees with me. I mean, we by no means have the same ideas about television, and she will put in. She's very good about maintaining my voice and my opinions, but she will often on things like comedy, which I have no sense of humour, and I fucking hate comedy, but she loves it, and so we disagree about
listen,
that.
I've just got a small observation here, but I write sometimes, not as much as A. Gill, but I have a great admiration for brilliant editors. But what was implicit in your observation was that basically broadcaster commissioning editors were an obstacle to you and a load of shit, And well, that is that in some people feel they have documentaries and there's something called television, and in transit the documentaries get damaged by television, and I would. Yes, I'd take.
I think there's a problem with the editing process in television. Is that on one level is that television is a medium that consumes its children until it makes itself sick. So everybody.
You've got to enlarge on that.
Well, everybody, you get something that's a success. Nobody really knows what's going to be a success and what's going to be a hit. And when something is a hit, everybody wants to make it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So people will say, I want the next, or I want another. And you look at this cloning of ideas until they water down, until they become this terrible, anemic, cynical nonsense. One of the problems, the overall problems with television, seeing as we're talking more about problems than about good things, but one of the overall problems is that it's made by a lot of people who don't watch enough television. I mean, television is the only medium that I know where I regularly talk to producers and directors who'll say, well, I don't really watch much.
I find that hard to believe. Well, what do they do then?
Well, who have you been talking to?
I don't know.
Lots of people don't watch. Lots and lots of people who work in television don't watch much television. And if they do, they watch it for work. They don't go... When I finish writing my television reviews, I go and sit and watch television. I watch it because it's what I like to do. It's what I would be doing. If I was unemployed, I would be doing the same thing that I do when I'm employed. So, I mean, I don't know of any other cultural medium where people would say, there's no theatre director who would ever say, actually, I don't go to the theatre much. No film director ever says, I can't bear watching films. But I mean, people who work in television say that.
Yeah. We got a clip to play us out, but do you have any ideas? I'm sure the answer is no, actually, for the improvement of television. Do you have do you have an idea that things could be a little better, or do you just think it's fine and some of it's great, a lot of it's not great, but basically it's a terrific thing?
I think television is a marvellous thing. I mean, overall, television is and I don't believe in golden ageism. I mean, people often write to me saying, well, there was the golden age when your dad was making television. Well, it just wasn't, and I don't believe that. I think all my life is that the television this year has been better than the television was last year, and that's a terrific thing. To be working in any medium where the curve is all upwards, it's all getting better, and there is a lot of stuff which is dross. But then there's an enormous amount of stuff which is just simply fantastic. I mean, if you had to work in one medium now, if you could choose any medium to work in now as a creative person, it would have to be television.
Thanks a lot, Gill. Please, a round of applause. That was very good.